Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss out! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will crush.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Welcome to a last-minute emergency episode of the Deep Chill with Danunaki Dan and myself. How's it going, Dan? How you doing?
Good, man.
Yeah, that's good. I'm doing good. This is weird. The last 24, so last night around like 11 p.m. my time, maybe later, I was just about to go to bed and I stumble across this random YouTube video, and it's talking about Atlantis, the Garden of Eden. It's talking about the center and the origin of humanity. The guy talking about it is this gigantic mustached, well, the mustache was gigantic, big mustached dude who slightly even resembled an Eeyore Bock type character. All these different parallels started happening, and I was watching something about this theory or whatever called the Saxer Saga, Saxer, and I immediately texted Dan and was like, what the hell is this? And yeah, so I just needed to do an episode on this immediately and just get this at least, I don't know, under our belts. And if it's useful or nonsense, whatever, some of it might be good, some of it might be bad, but I just felt like we needed to like add this in as soon as possible to the greater conversation.
Yeah, for sure, man. Did you finish the whole thing?
I didn't get to the end of the video. I tried tonight and I still was like rewinding and taking notes and going, what the fuck, like all these different connections. So you might have to fill me in a little bit on like the ending. Maybe, let's see, where was I?
Okay.
Yeah, I was about.
Did you get to the
20,
one dude
30
talking
minutes.
about the gopher trees?
Don't know if
The
I got
old
to.
guy?
No, I don't think I got to gopher trees. I did get to, of course, giant trees, which, ladies and gentlemen, that's a popular little theme that's been going around, and that's involved in this Saxer Saga as well. It all takes place in Florida.
Yeah. So tell me what you think about it, because I think I have maybe a different view after watching the whole thing, and being that Roman and Juan and some other guys, Paranoid American, Gabe, they've kind of been doing this stuff about Florida lately, so I've been kind of paying attention to some of the stuff that they've been talking about. So I thought it was actually pretty fucking interesting that they're saying that the Garden of Eden is in Florida, considering there's also a place called Bock Tower, which has like this big giant garden around it, and it's supposed to be like a Garden of Eden too. So it's kind of like same but different, and then in a different location where this guy is talking about being the Garden of Eden. But I thought there was some interesting Greek mythology in it that I wasn't completely aware of. And I thought that was interesting also because we talked to a guy on the show that told us about some Greeks possibly being around in 500 AD in the Americas. So I thought that was kind of an interesting connection also to that show that we had done previous. And so yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. I didn't agree with like everything they were saying, and it did kind of weird me out that the guy did look like Eeyore Bock a little bit. And he even said he had Swiss background and came from like royalty and then
Right.
he was also like from the line of Isaac, which is like Jacob, and the same line of David and Jesus. So I thought that was kind of interesting and weird too. And he was Swiss
Right.
royalty, so that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Well, as you were saying before the show, how like California and Florida have a lot of similarities as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so like along those same parallels, I'll back it up a little bit and say that at first, as you read my text as well, I was like freaking out. Like
Yeah.
this feels like it's a polar opposite counterpart, black versus white, whatever, to
Mm-hmm.
the pagan Bock Saga. Because so this is based in Greek mythology specifically,
Yep.
leading of
Mm-hmm.
course to Roman Catholicism, Jesus, the whole thing, borders on the millennial kingdom type stuff without really suggesting it or saying it on the nose with it. But so that is a gigantic polar opposite, of course, right there, because we're dealing with a heathen tradition, right, versus this very more orthodox, more monotheism. Everything is going a different direction. With this Saxer Saga, it seems like one is upholding one narrative and another is upholding another the other. But at the same time, to what you're saying, to the credit, I'll give you credit for what you're saying here, is that like there's a lot of connections to the saga rather than opposition as well, where it's like, well, the Bock Saga claims that these ring lands were all over the earth at one time, so, and everything was clearly fractal in their cultures, from the inside out. So we've also said that the all fathers were in all the ringlands. Every ringland had an all father, just as
Mm-hmm.
it resembled the original one. According to the saga, it would be up there, right? There's probably a number of different places that could claim they were the number one first all father or first ringland. Maybe that's the case here. I don't know. There's so much more that I've already kind of investigated with the Scandinavian side of things that it's like this is so new. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know what to make of it entirely yet, but there's a lot of parallels, but there's also a lot of like silliness going on where it's like, okay, this guy in particular is talking about literally Poseidon. So I actually wrote down some of the parallels because I thought this was important. Both of our stories here, the Bock Saga and the Saxer Saga, have crystal balls and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of shit buried in the ground. This Saxer saga suggests that this was like the artifact that Poseidon was literally using. So we're going to material, physical, giant alien gods. And it's also very alien friendly, this
Mm-hmm.
Saxer Saga, whereas the
Yes.
Bock Saga is very, very human and nothing
Human.
more.
Yeah.
So we have the poles there again.
I will say though that the Box Saga does talk about the three crystal balls, and they don't know where
Yes,
they're at. So
right. They're supposedly buried or scattered or something. So
yeah.
that is interesting.
So
So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not that some of this feels like it goes up like against one another, but other
yeah.
parts of it feel like, oh no, this is part of the same story. And I think this Saxer Saga. Now I'm biased, admittedly biased, because I've looked
Right.
so much into the saga for so long, the Bock Saga, that is. But from my perspective, from my very biased perspective, it feels like the Saxer story here is a little big for its britches, and it thinks it's the Bock Saga. But
Right.
again,
Yeah, it
that's
kind
from
of
my
feels like that to
biased
me.
perspective. You know what I mean? But that's another big duality there, where it's like you do have this Greek mythological timeline leading to Christianity in the long run versus a very
Mm-hmm.
pagan heathen story being pushed. So there is that comparison, that possible conflict, that possible rivalry, subconscious, conscious, completely accidental. I don't know what to make of that, But hang on, before I forget, there's more. Also,
Yeah.
buried treasure. The dude's literally uncovering supposedly effigies to the underworld on his own property.
Keyhole.
Keyhole. With a keyhole. Yeah. A keyhole. Did you notice some of the imagery on the keyholes that were flashed on the screen in that scene when they was talking about that? Because it showed little circles, like whirling circles with lines in it, which would literally have made the spinning swastika. It was pretty wild. I was like, oh, that's an interesting coincidence. There was even an image of Thor and goats that popped up on the screen at one point. I'm like, was that an accident? Why did that just pop up while he's talking about Poseidon?
Yeah.
So yeah, buried treasure. At some points he's trying to use like phonetics to explain paradise and things like that. Very similar to obviously how Bock Saga explains things.
Hesperides.
Yeah, the Garden of Hesperides, and he says that this is where the word paradise comes from. He even shortens it and says that they would say parodies, and it's like, well, geez, that sounds a lot like Paradisette from the Bock Saga. So again, I want to say that to me right now, it feels like this is a remnant of those ringlands that the saga talks about. But over time, whatever has been remembered and held on to has been misconstrued because of this very Christian versus pagan duality that's existed for a very long time.
And Plato.
What about him?
Plato. Yeah. Well, he gives the imagery of what Atlantis is supposed to be like.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's another entire part of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're talking
Greek, right?
Yeah. We're talking about the Atlanteans. We're talking about the Atlanteans who fought the Athenians. We're not talking about Alt-Lant East. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the same people with a lot of the same cultural ideas and concepts, but have an entire, have lost that phonetic old world language. So you were mentioning something to me with your first assessment about this, suggesting they have something, or the guy has something mixed up about before and after the flood, how things didn't match up a little bit for you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, because the Garden of Eden is pre-deluge, right? So I guess it could be a remnant of Atlantis, but it wouldn't be during the Greek time period because the Greeks were so long after the flood.
Right.
If we're going by the flood narrative from Bock Saga, or like the crashing of the icebergs over the land, which causing a flood, which is like Younger Dryas kind of era, 10,000, around that 10,000 BC area, then Greeks weren't around yet, they just weren't. Because even in like some of the mythology of the Greeks, it's like the Atlanteans that give like the Greeks. I think there's a verse in Plato. Is the guy is telling him about it, and he's like, "You're like too dumb to even realize like these, like you come from them." Like these are like your own fucking people, that you're going to war with, like you're descendants of the Atlanteans, but you probably don't even realize it,
right?
Because it's been so far long ago. So
Solon was like, whatever, man, this is amazing.
How's their Greeks during this time? So that's one of my hangups. I do think like maybe there was like some type of maybe I should say Atlantic civilization that was happening.
The seafaring
traders, mercantile culture that was going on, and they were using the Amazon for terra preta, for soil to grow shit, and also a lot of the Americas, Africa, Spain, Hispaniola, Celtibaria, all these different places were parts of like this Atlantic culture that maybe gets mixed up with what Atlantis was in the mythology too.
Right.
So that
Well,
would
so
be like
yeah,
my
that
thing, because he's coming from a Greek era. So that's like, maybe, I don't know how long ago the Greeks go back, but maybe like 3000, 2000 BC.
I'm gonna look it up right
Uh,
now.
well, they say Egypt is like 3000, Sumeria is like
Yeah.
4000.
Well,
So the Greeks
yeah,
had to be
4,000.
in after there. Yeah.
But yeah, more recent. How back to which Greeks go?
So it's possible that they could have came
Yeah,
over here
1100
in
BC.
1100
Yeah.
BC.
So let's
So
see. So it goes all the way back to around 1100 BC. So I mean, give or take, I'll give them 1,000 years because fuck academic science on
yeah, who
Google.
knows about
Like what? Who
fucking
knows if it's true or not? But I'd give
timelines,
them a
but
1,000 years. It still doesn't
sure.
make a difference. You'd need
Yeah,
another
they still are not the
9,000.
Garden of Eden.
No, not even close. Especially,
Yeah.
oh man, yeah. There's a lot to get into in the coming months. I have a guy contacted me just the other day. I'll tell you about it later. That has a lot of interesting takes on ancient, like we're talking like 400,000-year-old cave drawings and shit like that, like alluding to Arctic culture and shit like that. So we'll get where
Mm,
there's going to be a lot more evidence coming forward, I think, to kind
yeah. I,
of
I
just
just watched
broaden this picture. If anyone survival gamers out there with a mini map where you don't get to see the larger area until you go there, like I think a lot of our map is gonna get uncovered quicker and quicker as we add more things in. Because this idea
yeah.
that all these guys that we know have been talking about Florida, I've heard about this, and I know there's pages on YouTube dedicated to like ancient Florida. I just haven't had the time
Mhm.
yet to look into it. So that's gonna just open up a can of worms, I'm sure, if we
Well,
find
there's
these two
definitely
things.
been according to like Randall Carlson, his younger Dryas is has more to do with comet impacts. And the younger Dryas of like Bock Saga is not, which is not even called the younger Dryas. They just give a date for it. But even like I have a problem with their dating too, because they're using a Gregorian calendar and saying like June 24th, and they wouldn't have had no fucking June 24th back then. But
Yeah, there's a lot of
uh
modernization there.
yeah, so uh you know, where was I going? I fucking lost my train of thought.
You pulled an Andy. Oh man. Well, we can share a little
But
bit.
yeah, so they don't call it the younger Dryas. So
No.
but with the comet impact idea, uh apparently like the Gulf of Mexico was one of those impact zones,
Yep.
and that could have caused a lot of area to sink. And then also we have like Bimini Road, which
Mm-hmm.
is off the coast of Florida to the in the Atlantic. And then we also have pyramids in Cuba. We have a lot of big pyramids in Mexico and Central America. And then there's a pyramid in Georgia also. So I think there was a lot of stuff going on in that Gulf area, and possibly there could have been like a ringland in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're thinking like, oh, Florida is this ancient Garden of Eden, because this was like Atlantis, when maybe it was just like the second version, or like not the Atlantis, but the Atlantic civilization of these mariners that were up and down the Atlantic doing trading with the Americas and with um, the Africa and Europe.
Yeah, you get to kind of include a lot of the different theories and hypotheses that have come out about Atlantis over the years. Like this idea that it wasn't just one place, that it was many
Mm-hmm.
places has come up in different forms. This seafaring the trading group, or international, if you want to call it that. Pirates, almost like a world of
Yeah.
pirates, basically. Um so that fits as well as the Bock Saga story. Like it all kind of fits together. And it's kind of nice when you look at the idea of alt land east, all land is ice, this very tragic mega story of our history. Slowly but surely, the word just can't go away. Even though it changes, it becomes a title, a name of a place or a nation, it stays with us. Even at the end of Quetzalcoatl and other similar gods, like you have that ATL, it's all right there. So it's all like I'm starting more and more to like the more inclusive we are. Some would say that might be dangerous in some ways, but I think we are discerning in a good way while trying to be as inclusive as possible. Like what does fit? Because, I think a lot of intelligent people have come up with a lot of interesting ideas that, again, it's always like one puzzle piece that you have that might, really fit in with everything else, where the rest of it you might be filling in, or you might be hoping it's true and it may not be, but some part of it fits. And I think we're just going to keep uncovering more and more of this. It's kind of like snowballing, it feels like.
Yeah, there seems to be, like, through our Ancient America series that we kind of did for a couple months, and Atlantis and Lemuria, we've kind of heard a lot of stories about the ancient Americas, and it's very interesting because there's like the Ohio Valley mounds, and that civilization, and they say that those date around 3100 BC, which is a little bit before like Egypt. So and then we know like the people that came to Egypt, Toth, calls himself Thoth the Atlantean or whatnot, and that's where Hermetic code comes from, Hermetic principles, Hermeticism. So there's a very interesting connection between Atlantis and Egypt. There's a connection between the Americas and Quetzalcoatl, who's also Toth. There was we talked to Esoteric Eddie, who said that it was Toth who brought the Olmec over from Africa over to the Americas. That's in the Olmec mythology. So there's a lot of these interesting connections to America being known about and being around, and not that it was like hidden, but maybe it was captive. Maybe it was, I think, like, in a way, this mercantile class that ruled the Atlantic and ruled these trading routes were like creating these stories of krakens and stuff like that, and stuff, so people wouldn't travel outside of the Pillars of Hercules, out of the Mediterranean, to go over here and look, because they didn't really necessarily want them to, because they had it all on lock over here and it was there. So if anybody came over to fuck with them, they were gonna fuck them up.
Yeah, here there be monsters, and it wasn't a lie.
Right. And they had all these different islands set up in the Atlantic as like almost like bases, and to bring about the goods for collection and distribution. So it was a whole fucking ring, dude. So to speak. No pun intended.
Well, you made me think of the mining of the gold too, from the Anunnaki story.
From Africa. Right.
Well, they need to build their atmosphere over in Nigeria. All right.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about Nibiru, but I hold out a little bit on it, because there is like some stuff going on there, that the symbol of the cross, the planet of the crossing. They say most solar systems have dual suns, and we seem to only have one. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to, like, oh, well, maybe we do. It's just farther fucking away and we don't realize it. So, and it comes from the Sumerians. So they seem to have a lot of shit on lock too. They seem to know what they're talking about, and some of their things. A lot of stuff seems to have come from them too later on in history. So I don't know if the translations are absolutely correct or whatnot, but so I don't totally judge it, but I hold it open. It's on my back burner.
So this Saxer Saga, it's I'm trying to like search for like, with
More.
Bock Saga, you can kind of at least get a bunch of
Yeah.
images.
Well, it's
I mean, it's
interesting.
older too, I think. This is like, man, I'll share. So let me
That
share the
had to be
screen.
from like the early 90s or something, man.
Dude, like
I
what
did see a
the fuck?
timestamp on it that said 20 produced in 2013.
Yeah.
But
hang
yeah,
on a
but
second.
look at this guy in his gold jacket, dude. He looks like a WWF fucking manager.
Right. Yeah, hang on one second.
Like fucking
All right,
Brother
yeah.
Love or some shit.
Yeah, like what the fuck? So here's the thing. At first I thought, for those just listening, guys, we're looking at an
Red.
old man who again resembles like a smaller Eeyore Buck type old guy with a big mustache and beard. He's wearing like a captain's hat. And he's on a television show with a red curtain backdrop with a man who looks like a fat comedian, basically, with a gold bright jacket on with killer sideburns. It looks like a public access conspiracy show from the early 90s. But
Totally.
then this dude starts mentioning Wikipedia and shit like that.
Oh,
So
really?
this guy, this show, this thing that looks like it's from the early 90s took place at least after what, 2007, 8? Not, I don't even know when Wikipedia.
Yeah, like I said,
been around.
there's a timestamp on the video that says produced in 2013.
Okay, so that makes sense. So we're looking at 2013. This guy starts to popularize his theories about the Saxer Saga in Florida. It maybe give him a few years. I'm not sure. What the other videos seem a little bit older that I've seen him in. Some not the other videos, the other parts of the video, he seems younger.
Okay.
But this all talks about, it includes like the elongated skulls and it's definitely framed as aliens. So this scene right here, for those just listening again, we're having an aerial view of this area of Florida. And again, Dan, do you remember what part of Florida this is? It starts with a T. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a small area of Florida.
No. Tarpon?
Tarpon.
Tarpon.
Tarpon. Tarpon, Florida. So Tarpon
like
Gardens.
Tarpon almost.
Tar too.
Yeah,
as well.
tar.
So, but this is the part that really just had my eyebrows raised. I'm like, are you kidding me? And my wife is like buried in something she's watching and she puts her phone down like, are you kidding me? What is happening right now? Because he is telling us that the shapes of the water, the lakes and rivers, tributaries in this area of Florida are Atlas, Poseidon, Atlas's lover. I can't remember. Hesperides. Yep. Hence the Garden of Hesperides. The dragon. So here's the other thing. They quote the Bible or a Greek passage. I can't remember what, but they talk about a serpentine river, or even the fact that the Euphrates River means
it's Greek mythology.
Yeah, it's Greek mythology.
Yeah, Euphrates.
And the Euphrates River means like a dragon-shaped river or something like that. So
yeah.
So here's the thing about that. A dragon looks like it looks in certain artwork. Sometimes it looks like this, sometimes it doesn't. But the reason why a lot of rivers do this is because it's the path of least resistance. I mean, this is how rivers flow in a lot of different areas of the world on purpose for specific reasons. That's just the tip of the iceberg of what we could say about claiming that this Saxer Saga even involves the shape of the lakes telling the story to us. Like, that is where, like, I don't like to draw lines. I clearly usually don't, but what the fuck? What do you think of that, Dan? I hope I'm presenting that to those who aren't viewing this clearly, that he's literally saying the shapes of lakes are telling us part of this friggin' history. And it's like, are you kidding me?
What he said is it's Poseidon marrying Atlas to Hesperides,
Yes.
and you can see like this whole thing going on with these tributaries and the water, how they're shaped. And I was talking to Roman about it earlier, and I was like, it's fucking ink blots, dude. I mean, you can make anything out of this.
Yeah, they're just saying like the
I
top part
personally
of
didn't really see it. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't
sorry,
see
yeah.
it. But I looked up the etymology of Euphrates, and it
Mhm.
says it may have originated from Old Persian, uh, Ufratu, and it was from Avestan hu Peratua, meaning good to cross over. So,
Interesting. We were just talking about the crossing.
and if somebody else has another explanation of Euphrates meaning Snake River, then I didn't see one.
Hmm. That's well, there you go. I've definitely heard it mentioned allegorically, artistically, that's kind of
Mhm.
how I've always taken it. This is taking literalism to an extreme, I think, at least in this part of this
Yes.
documentary. Um,
Yes.
what would that, because he doesn't explain how or why that would be. He just says, see, even the land is in the water is showing you the story. It's like, okay, are you saying that they carved these rivers and they were just really bad
Yeah, that's
artists?
what he's saying. Yeah, right. Well, I mean,
Really shitty
maybe
artists.
time.
Like they even look at the
Yeah,
top of
really
this.
not good.
They look at the top of this river and they at one point in the documentary it points to it and says elongated skull question mark, and then it flashes like this ridiculous Hollywood like giant alien head on the screen. I'm like, all right, so we're basically like dealing with poor man's Giorgio Tsoukalos here. What's like, what the fuck is happening? So, but not to say that there isn't a lot of really compelling shit in this documentary. There is a lot because I think there's clearly what you and me and many others have been looking into. It exists pretty much everywhere we can look. And
Yeah.
now that a lot of us are distrusting the typical establishment's histories, I think, it's a vulnerable time because we have so much to play with and there's so many variables that we are now kind of entertaining as a whole that a lot of these things are going to continue to be mixed together and it's going to be a very delicate process to kind of untangle everything. But I think we have a lot of I think the puzzle has been dumped on the floor in front of us in a lot of ways.
Hmm. I think one of the yeah, I really didn't get this part of it. He showed some maps describing what it talks about in the Greek mythology. I think this is like a what you're showing now is like a map from it,
Yeah,
and he was comparing it to Florida.
it caught my eye
And
a little bit.
maybe so, but the other thing he was talking about didn't make any fucking sense to me.
What was that
One
part?
thing that it showed though on the video was Neptune Beach and a couple other beaches or cities, kind of with Greek names.
Yeah,
Uh, like there's Point Siana, there's Jupiter. Uh,
trying to find
I'm
this part.
I'm looking for some more, but some of the ones that I remember the other guys talking about were like oh, that were in the video was Port St. Lucie,
Oh yeah,
which is like Santa Lucia, which is another connection to Bock Saga and the Santa Lucia festival of the woman putting the candles in her hair,
mm-hmm.
which I thought maybe kind of resembles even the Statue of Liberty a little bit, but I
Yeah,
might be pulling strings. But it is the light, and she had these candles in her hair. So I mean, the statue's crown like pokes out like these candles, and she's illuminated.
Oh yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
So check this out.
There's also another town called St. Petersburg, Florida, which St. Petersburg is the pearly gates. So I think that's another interesting connection.
That is interesting.
Because there's a St. Petersburg, Russia, which I think is the original pearly gates. Because if you go through St. Petersburg in Russia, it actually kind of takes you over to the Baltic Sea to be able to go into like Udenma or whatnot. So, and then there's Miami, which is Maya, right? Maya.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've talked about that too. It's like,
yeah.
And even like, and you look at the demographics in Miami, I don't know what they are today, but like, I know there's a large Jamaican population down there, and you look at Jamaica too. I mean, we've made connections with a lot of patois and like the words they use to a lot of terms. You know, when you look at it, it's like, well, Rastafari, you know, Ra. I think actually Yake broke that whole thing down. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically just said it's like the raw of another land, basically. It's like the far off sun or something. So it's the raw star far eye. So it's like the far off land of Ra.
And that I could be E.
Yeah, exactly.
Rastafari.
Yeah.
As in, you know. So check this out. The interesting part about this Saxer thing that I found, another connection to the saga, a little bit loose, but this idea that there's this Greek festival where they come back for like the sponge fishing or whatever in this part of Florida. Yeah. And like, so the Greeks like migrated there and they started doing this every year. And he talks about this returning to source. And you and I have talked about the concept of pilgrimage going back to source. Of course, we've talked about it mostly in terms of the saga being replicated in Christianity or something, or Catholicism. But again, this does reminisce of that returning to source idea. It's very interesting. I would like to see how rich this story might be. I mean, this is recent, so maybe we could talk to some of these guys. I would definitely like to talk to the gold jacket dude. So just maybe not even about the Saxer Saga, just to know what he's all about. Like I thought you were a time traveler.
Independent. Yeah, I'll try to contact some independent wrestling companies and see if I can find them.
Yeah, that paints a good picture for the listeners, honestly. But that's another funny, very
got like
subtle
a Bobby
connection.
The Brain Heenan gold jacket.
Yeah. I called him Shooter McGavin to you last night. I was like, what's this like fucking poor man Shooter McGavin? What is this? Another connection that I just noticed, it's probably not intentional, obviously, it's just a synchronicity that most of this footage, even though it was 2013, it's all this old grainy bullshit footage from the 90s, just like all of the footage on bocksaga.info, where like most of the information from young Michelle Merle and younger Eeyore is all on this like crappy VHS recording over and over. You know what I mean? Just this loose kind of thing. It's just so bizarre. And this guy's so eccentric too, similar to Eeyore, where I need to look into it further, but he's like, yeah, I became an Egyptologist for a while. Like, what do you mean there?
One
do you
part
mean
that
you like
lost
went
me
to Egypt?
was that he said he was a psychic archaeologist. And when they asked him about him being a psychic archaeologist, he said he read a book about psychic archaeology, and then he always wanted to be a psychic archaeologist. And then when he was walking by this place one day, it like called to him, and then he found it. So now he's a psychic archaeologist. And I was
there
like,
you go. Boom. Manifestation.
I think you need to do
That's
a
the
little
secret.
bit more than that to declare yourself a psychic archaeologist.
Well, it's funny too, because he also claims that like from an early age, you know, even before he had researched his family lineage, that apparently, according to him, goes back to Isaac, which, you know, Jacob, it's the Jesus line. So that's not high and mighty or anything, but again, that's another parallel, right? It's another parallel to this man Eeyore, who claims that his family goes back to the first family ever, right? It's very grandiose, but at the same time, maybe there's more validity here. I mean, he talks about his family line. We've asked Jock about it. He's, verifies that this is a family in Sweden, a royal line and everything. So it's like,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah. I thought we talked to
Oh,
didn't we were talking to him about it in Telegram earlier. He said something.
yeah,
I'm probably misquoting him because I don't remember things.
yeah. I
Let me
asked
look.
him if he knew the guy, and he knew who he was already, and he said no, he doesn't. He has no idea. So I don't know what he was referring to when he said Von. Uh, this
Von Sax.
he called him something different, like the
Let me go back.
yeah.
Uh,
But there's Titusville. There's
and
Winter
Sinning.
Haven. Uh,
Oh yeah, Winter
Winter
Haven.
Garden. There's a Four Corners, Florida. So the four corners of the world. So that's interesting too.
So Jock said they call him Van Sinning.
Yeah, Van Sinning.
Von Sinning.
Vaughn.
Von
He's
minded.
Vonner.
Very true. And you were like, oh, of this Von Sachs guy. And I think he meant to say, yeah, never heard of, but in Swedish it means delusional or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that this guy is pointing to an actual royal family, the Von Sachs line. I'm sure he wouldn't be so dumb that no one was going to look that up immediately. Yeah, right off the bat, we should have talked about that long before now, that Von, VAN, has been part of like surnames for fucking ever. And
Yeah.
that's a Bock Saga thing right
Vonner.
off the bat. That's all the families and people that lived outside of the Acer were Vonner. So that is interesting, and that's not just Eeyore Bock going, oh yeah, I found that name is everywhere in surnames, so I'm just going to use that as part of my little mythology I'm cooking up. No, you look into etymology and those languages, that's it lines up.
It's in Norse. It's in Norse
Man.
too, the Vonner.
That's what I'm
the
saying.
Acer, right?
Yeah, the Acer and the
Yeah.
Vonner exist regardless. It's weird. I wonder, because at one part in this he gets into the phonetics, but I can't remember what he really talked about now. But I want to say that this guy was making a lot of like adjacent to root language type comments, and he was mentioning, I think he even mentioned Finnish folklore, but I know he was talking about obviously like Scandinavian folklore in general, with the Swiss and the Swedish. So there's a lot of interesting connections.
A Dania Beach.
Where? Florida?
Florida, Dania Beach. Yeah.
How do you spell it?
You know my shit with the Dans, Dania.
Dania.
Yeah, because I think the Dans were like the mercantile class, and they were the ones they were at the Atlantic civilization that was, maintaining this area.
So they were the Dons.
They're the Dons.
Yeah, that's probably where it comes from in the mafia as well.
You have Jordan. Yeah, because
then in California you have Redonda Beach. Redonda Beach.
That's true. Yeah. And you have Jordan, and then you have the Sudan.
Yeah. The Jordan, like maybe connected to Jarl, like that cast. Perhaps we're going a little off topic, right?
Yeah,
we're going down one of our language rabbit holes. But is there anything else that you'd like to bring up about this Saxer Saga, or anything that you've talked to Roman and Juan about, perhaps, that might I don't know, intrigue the audience, intrigue me? Because I don't know anything about this Florida stuff. This is kind of my first venture into it.
Well, there's Bock Tower.
Yeah, let's bring up this Bock Tower.
Bock Tower, Florida.
And it's
It's called
BOK.
Bock Tower Gardens. Yeah, and it's BOK. Uh, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that really matters though,
It's
because
but it's a 250 acre contemplative garden and bird sanctuary located atop Iron Mountain, north of Lake Wales.
look at this fucking thing. I mean, this screams, gothic.
Has a pool, the water in front of it too.
Now, I mean, I found this video connected to Tartaria conversations. Like I think that was the YouTube page that
Yeah.
this was featured on, is mostly like a Tartaria kind of, wow, this thing, it really does tower over the whole area. It's pretty wild. It's a big dick. Look at that. We got a big giant phallus sticking up in Florida, just like in so many other places. Yeah, so this is from a Tartaria perspective that at least this page about old Florida is coming from. And I know that Tartaria obviously plays a role in this whole thing, but it's much, much, much more recent than a lot of the territory that Dan and I typically are rummaging through. You know what I mean? It kind of leads into Tartaria. But I'd like to get Andreas on here with us to talk. I told him about this, and he's like, "We got to go deep on that." So I think he'd be a good person to talk to about it and see if some more connections can be made as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
There in the video they mentioned lilies and another flower, and I can't remember what the other flower was.
I can't either.
But they had significance to also like Santa Lucia festival of putting the flowers in the hair.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what it reminded me of. So like I think like the Greek version of this Hesperides is kind of like a reflection of the Bock Saga and these Disas and what do you call swans?
Yeah.
Swans, right?
Right. Yeah, the swan.
They were being picked for fertility.
Right.
And so even the story of Hesperides has like this fertility aspect in it where she's like basically marrying Atlas and
procreating,
seeding Florida.
Right, seeding the whole place. And then of course you have that myth of the seeds coming up. And so
yeah. And
it's all still fertility.
I thought the democracy thing was interesting too.
Which aspect of it? Because he does mention that in terms of like the Swiss liberation or something, or
yeah, I'm having problems with my microphone. Let me
you still sound sexy as always.
Oh well, thank you. So apparently he was comparing it to like the seers of what's that one famous chick called in Greek mythology? The Oracle of Delphi. Oracle of Delphi. And they would sit above like the water on a thing, and they would basically inhale these fumes and have hallucinations and being able to talk to whatever they're talking to, the other world. And what he said, he found this keyhole door, and he had chopped down all of these trees that were in like this like kind of broken down building. He said he couldn't even see like this keyhole thing that led underground when he was walking by it, and he had to move, and basically like it was like 3 blocks from where he lived, and he was walking his dog, and that's when his psychic abilities told him to go check it out, and he found this keyhole, and he chopped down all the gardens, and then everything grew back really fast. And he said like he had just chopped it down like not even a month ago and or a couple months ago. I can't remember. It was like 2 or 3 months, I think. 3 months maybe. But
I think it was
everything
two
was
or three
grown
months.
back like huge and lush. And he
Yeah.
was saying this because Hesperides is pushing out the seeds
Right.
for the of the plants because she's in charge of the plants. And she gave like plant life to mankind.
It's pretty wild.
And so through this keyhole thing that goes down into the subterranean world to the underground, she would basically sit there and she would have conversations with demons from the underworld. And this was called demonocracy, democracy.
Demonocracy.
And this
Yeah.
was like, yeah, this is how that because it was about a two-sided thing, right? Just like democracy is, left and right. And so she was able to be democratic and talk to the demons from the underworld and come back with knowledge to give to the people.
Hmm.
And I thought that was a pretty interesting
It's pretty
for lots
intense.
of reasons.
Yeah, for
lots.
reasons. Just generally
For lo-
speaking, it's interesting to think about.
Demonocracy,
Yeah.
you know.
Also,
Uh,
you mentioned some sort of boxing celebration or something like that in Florida that happens. What was that? You were mentioning before we hit record, of course.
oh,
It was some,
boxing?
maybe not
No.
boxing, but it was Bock something. It was like a day or a parade or something in Florida. Shit.
Oh, this was in Louisiana
Oh, it was
though.
Louisiana. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. During Mardi Gras, and it's called
Hmm.
King. It was King Bacchus,
King
and
Bacchus.
they have a carnival, and
Hmm.
a parade for King Bacchus, and celebrities dress up as Bacchus and kind of go down the parade route, dressed
What do
as
they look like when they get dressed up? Do
um,
they have horns?
Greek. No, they look like Greeks.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All
I
right.
just thought it was interesting because Louisiana is also in that Gulf area, right?
Hmm.
And all of those lower areas of like Louisiana and Georgia and Florida, they all kind of have like a connection um to this like Atlantis civilization. Even Scott Wolter, when he was like doing his America Unearthed show and talking about the Mayans and how they use this blue dye, the Mayan blue, that
Hmm.
they would cover their bodies in. He said like the source of that he found was actually in Georgia. So either they
Interesting.
were driving a boat across the Yucatan into Georgia, or there was no bay there and there's maybe a source underwater, or or
There's
more of the
cave
source
systems
there.
all through that
Yeah.
whole area, miles and miles of natural caves under the Yucatan and all throughout that area. So, you
Uh,
can't help but wonder. You look at the cave systems in America, and then you look at where the
yeah.
Yucatan is. I just thought of that, but that's an interesting connection. Some of the most massive, I mean, literally mammoth cave system is right along that eastern coastline.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Also, in the video, they talked about a lot of underground caverns underneath
Yeah,
Florida, which is why they get a lot of sinkholes and shit because it just falls into the water because the ground is so thin.
right.
And in that kind of segment, he was talking about the river Styx,
Hmm.
uh, and kind of floating down the river of hell. So I thought that was another kind of interesting thing that I didn't really know about Florida myself. So I found the video all in all interesting. I wouldn't say it's like complete bullshit because I actually felt like I learned a few things from it.
Yeah, me as well.
And I also made some like different interesting connections to Florida and Bock Saga from it. So
Yeah, dude.
I was like, hey, there's some more stuff for Bock Saga right there.
I think it's just compelled
So
me to
I
look more into the the deep American stuff. Like the material you guys
yeah.
covered on Rising from the Ashes was pretty amazing. I took part in a couple of them. I had my
Mhm.
mind blown by a bunch of people. There's a lot going on. I mean, Emmanuel Kingman has talked about a lot of things in America as well, from a Christ perspective, the Millennial Kingdom. So
Yeah.
all of these, there's pieces everywhere that do fit.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
just think it's cautious. It's responsible to kind of remain. Don't die on any hills yet. None of us are dying on any hills here, like no
Yeah.
mounds or anything. No magnetic mountains. Where I just feel like all of it has a place. This has really compelled me to look further into the Florida stuff.
There's also an idea too that with the Mormons, our good buddy Adam, who does intros on the show, and he writes for Ancient American Magazine. Also,
Mm-hmm.
he said that there's like a Garden of Eden idea in the Mormon religion, and that is in I think it's Jackson, Missouri, or Jacksonville, Missouri. I can't remember if there's a veil on it or whatnot, but
That's close to
I also think
Jacksonville,
that's
Florida.
interesting. I also think that's interesting too because of uh, the big arch that's there too in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if you ever watched that show Defiance, but that takes place in Defiance, Missouri, which is St. Louis, Missouri, because they have
Mm-hmm.
the big arch there, and that's like after the alien invasion and whatnot. And that's a really good show if nobody's watched it. Defiance.
That sounds
It was
cool.
on Sci-Fi Channel.
Sci-fi has
It's really
hidden gems,
actually, if
especially a
you're
long time
super
ago.
into like if you're super into alien stuff, like that is like the coolest fucking show ever.
Sweet. I'll check it out. Sci-fi is just a little side note. The Sci-Fi Channel for a long time has put out extremely deep content in a lot of cases that
Yeah.
mostly gets canceled as it's starting to pick up
Yeah.
speed. That is the Sci-Fi
Yeah.
Channel
This one,
way.
same thing.
And I hate to say it, as much as I despised Bezos and everything everybody like him stands for, I did find it interesting and exciting a few years back when one of my favorite shows, The Expanse, was one of those victims and was getting canceled from the Sci-Fi Channel. I couldn't even believe it went 2 seasons, and Bezos saved it. And I'll give him credit for that, even though he probably jacked the fucking narrative of the show.
I think Defiance went 3, maybe 4 seasons, and just the character development in that is just fucking so good.
Nice.
They have like super white ass aliens, and
Are we talking
like
like
their
Nordics or just like
culture,
their color is white?
they're like fucking white.
A humanoid though?
They're very yes, and Nordic looking, yes.
Yeah.
Um, and they have a very weird like culture about them, and the main character of these people he's very conniving, and it's very interesting.
What's his
They
name?
also have like I can't recall it. It's been a while since I watched it. But they also have like a black civilization who likes to blow planets up and capture planets. And they have some Chewbacca looking people. They have some troll looking people. They have they have reptilians who are medics. This one
Interesting.
girl in it is a medic, and she's a reptilian. And then like the main character girl, who the human main character, it's like his adopted daughter, and she's this weird kind of alien with like a third eye thing going on. It's not even a third eye, it's like a dot, but she has like these weird powers. And basically it's set like after this alien invasion kind of happens, and and then like what happens is all the aliens that invaded, the war is over now, and now they have to learn to live with each other in harmony and peace, basically,
Mhm.
and try to get along, or whatever.
Interesting.
And so they go through all these different, it's a good drama series with these different alien creatures from all over the galaxy,
Sounds
but
a
in one
little
location.
like on the same philosophical lines as like District 9, a little bit like social commentary almost about xenophobia or something like that. Like, in a more
This
grandiose
is
way, like an enemy mine type of way.
this is a little bit. This is like a kind of like a little bit more Mad Max with like a sanctuary
Oh,
city of aliens.
gotcha. Okay. That sounds
Yeah.
fucking cool. Another gem is if anyone, I feel like a lot of people think of Battlestar Galactica as just like
Mm,
cheeseball stuff from a long time ago. That show is absolutely brilliant. That's another absolute hidden gem. Where did we
yeah.
get on alien sci-fi shows? I can't remember where we got off, but it was probably Nordics of some kind, right? Oh, Mormonism. That makes it right. Okay. Did you know
Yeah.
that a
Yeah.
lot of Mormon rituals uh mimic a lot of Freemasonic rituals? There's a
Oh.
lot of connections there.
Well, they're also the Moor men, right?
That's
So
true. That's
the
true.
Moors, yeah, yeah, Freemasonry. I don't know. That's a
I
stretch.
th- I
I
think
was just
we've
fucking around.
successfully confused each other, ourselves, and the audience to a new level. So I think it's a success. Um, more,
Success.
yeah, success. Yeah, so we have succeeded. Um, I don't know. I don't know how important, valid, or useful this Saxer Saga is, but I think there's some stuff to it. I think uh,
Yeah,
connections to what we've been looking into, which is awesome. Also, a lot of new ideas. So maybe not even new ideas, just again different angles to the same story, different time periods. And I think just to wrap it up a little bit with what I think about this Garden of Eden Atlantis idea, if I haven't kind of driven it home yet, is that yeah, it's just like a fractal, right? It's muscle memory. We're using the same all around the world. We had, I think, I'm not sure if I said this on the air before, but it's like we don't have cultures that last more than a couple hundred years, couple thousand years at the absolute max. So if we have this hypothetical culture of the saga, the Bock Saga from a long, long time ago that lasted possibly millions of years or even hundreds of thousands of years, be conservative about it, that could possibly echo out so hard that we just can't shake it from our muscle memory, from our consciousness. It's literally the thing that was everything. It was the way of life for so long that it's just embedded in us. And that's possibly where a lot of this, repeating hero's journey comes from. I mean, Joseph Campbell never even really said hero's journey. He said hero's adventure. So, journey
mm,
implies an end. So,
mhm.
this is ongoing. It seems it just echoed out forever. So whether the Bock Saga are really the ones that were at the beginning and it all fractaled out from there, or if it popped up in many places and similar. I don't know. We don't know yet, but
I have some ideas for some more deep chills in the future.
good.
One is the mushroom in the what's
The
it called?
cross.
Yeah, the mushroom
John,
in the
yeah,
cross
Allegro.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
That
pull the
book.
dust off that book. I haven't looked at that book in like 20 years. That
I
was one of the
think
first ones I ever bought after like tripping.
I was listening to Joe Rogan earlier with Aaron Rodgers, and they were talking about it. And Joe Rogan was saying that uh, that Allegro, basically they took the Dead Sea Scrolls and patched them all together from the skins. They collected the DNA to see what skins go with what, and then they pieced it together, and then they were able to find like this whole story. and it talked about mushrooms and eating and consuming the mushrooms and how they got all these stories. So it might be interesting to explore that to see if we can make any Bock Saga connections from there.
I would love to
'Cause
do that
I think that
because
would be a fun to do. And and then the other one, oh, go ahead though before I
yeah,
say the other one.
because the way I got into Bock Saga personally, when I first heard you talking about it, was my psychedelic experiences that really told me that I needed to look at what Dan was talking about further, because it echoed my experience of discovering some sort of story hidden inside of syntax or language itself, the words, the sounds that we put together as words. There was like a hidden story amongst all of it, and that's it sounded crazy, it felt crazy, and the story. I didn't think about that until you brought up Bock Saga. So the idea of John Allegro and the mushroom, and I think in his terminology, Jesus, the figure of Jesus, is the mushroom, like the body of Christ and all that, right? Eat
Yeah.
of my
Well, they were
flesh.
talking about how like in the Dead Sea Scrolls, when they reconfigured them, like the whole story, that the whole narrative that we have of the Bible now is kind of a bit construed from the original source, because this was found in Arabic. So it's like a even more original source than the rest of them. And they're talking about how these mushrooms were used in like a fertility type ritual that they did and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if that has any connections to the Bock Saga, because I've never actually read the book, but I heard some of the things that they were saying, and they were saying like God came on to some of the mushrooms and they would eat those ones.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah,
like,
when he's
"Ooh,
talking,
well,
they're
that's
talking about
fucking interesting, isn't it?"
they talk about the little sugar dots on the tops of the Amanita
Okay.
muscaria. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like God's semen or something like that.
Mhm.
So I thought that was kind of like an interesting thing. I was like, "Ooh, maybe there's something there." So I'd like to dig into that. And then the other one is I watched this documentary by Mr. Mythos on the angels and what their roles were in humanity. And I felt like he was talking about the whole Lemminkainen fertility, right? In a way,
Really?
it was like God stays on the throne, and he basically sends out these emissaries, and he has different castes of emissaries of these angels, and there's 3 different castes of them. It's very Atlantean, and basically all these different casts have different uh, roles that they play. They talked a lot about the wheels within wheels and the spheres, and Enoch and Ezekiel, and these different types of angel encounters, and notably that all the angels were males and not females was also kind of interesting. So I just felt like, oh, maybe there's some. Well, I watched the video. There's a lot of Bock stuff in it.
Yeah, it already sounds like it.
Yeah.
And
So I
the
sent it to
mushroom
you,
thing,
so
I don't think we're gonna
I'm gonna
find. What's that?
I'm gonna watch it again and take a bunch of notes on it. I sent it over to you, so
Okay.
if you can do the same, we can put
Yes.
that together and kind of do it like we did this one, and just kind of talk about it. I think that'd be
Absolutely,
fun.
man. Absolutely. Lot more coming up for the Deep Chill. We're gonna start releasing older episodes for free soon as well. So look forward to that. But yeah, everybody go check out the very limited amount of resources on YouTube and the internet so far that I've found for the Saxer Saga, Saxer. It's interesting to say the least, and I think there's plenty of connections to be made, at least.
Yeah, it was put out a little over a week ago by channel called Old World Florida. So
Check
shout
them
out
out.
to them too
Yeah.
for credit, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they had a good amount of videos that we could dig into. I would like to maybe even talk to those guys because there's a lot of I think the more regions we talk to is going to be really helpful. We're going to like just kind of build a new map as best we can. I would love to get some Australian Tartaria people to talk to. That sounds really
Yeah.
intriguing, you know. Yeah, so a lot
Yeah.
coming up. But yeah, take this and run with it. See what you guys can find. See if it's anything more than what we've said. Any connections that you see that we haven't. And yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'm putting this out tomorrow morning. So yeah, I just want this out.
Yeah.
I want eyes on it.
Remember,
All right, everybody. Dan, I love you. I'll see you soon. Everybody,
love you too,
I
brother.
love you. Talk to you next time.
Chill the fuck out.
Yeah. And read a book.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, vegetarian. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay?